She returned the biker's lost ring without knowing its value. What they did next will shock you. Act 1. The ring in the dirt, dawn at the edge of nowhere. The cold came down hard that November morning, the kind that settled into bones and stayed there like an unwelcome guest. The diner sat at a highway junction where two forgotten roads crossed, Interstate 40 heading east-west, and Route 6 running parallel like a ghost of America's past. Gravel lots surrounded the building, and beyond them stretched fields of dead grass that reached toward distant hills, painted purple by the pre-dawn light. A neon sign buzzed above the entrance, Betty's Diner, open 24 hours. Half the letters burned out, so it read, "B-Eyes Die in flickering red that cast strange shadows across the parking lot. The sign had been broken for 3 years, but Betty never fixed it. Said it gave the place character. Said people remembered it better that way. She crouched in the gravel beside the parking lot, fingers numb from cold, searching through dirt and cigarette butts and bottle caps and the general refuse of humanity passing through. Her name was Lily Chen, though she hadn't used her last name in 5 weeks and rarely spoke her first name aloud anymore. 16 years old, though the hardness in her eyes made her look older. Dark hair pulled back with a rubber band into a messy ponytail that had once been neat. A canvas jacket too thin for November mornings, olive green and fraying at the cuffs. Jeans worn through at both knees, not the fashionable kind, just the kind that came from wearing the same pair every day for weeks. A backpack containing everything she owned leaned against the diner's brick wall, within sight, always within reach. She wasn't looking for anything in particular in the gravel, just looking. Sometimes people dropped change when they fumbled for car keys. Sometimes they dropped more, bills that slipped from pockets, forgotten in the rush to get back, on the road. Last week she'd found a crumpled 20 near the dumpster, and it had bought her 3 days of not being hungry, 3 days of not having to calculate every single bite of food against the dwindling total in her pocket. Her fingers brushed something cold and heavy, half buried in the dirt where the gravel met the asphalt. She pulled it free and brushed off the dust with her thumb. A ring, not a cheap one, silver, thick, substantial, the kind that meant something to someone. The metal was tarnished but real, heavy in her palm. Inside the band was an engraving she couldn't quite read in the dim light, letters worn smooth by years of wear, and a symbol she didn't recognize, something that looked like wings and a wheel. Initials on the outside, visible even in the poor light, J.M. She turned it over in her palm, feeling the weight of it. It was heavy, real silver, maybe sterling, worth money probably. She thought about the pawn shop she'd seen 20 miles back, when the trucker had stopped for gas. Thought about what this might bring. $200, $3, maybe more if the pawnbroker was honest, which they usually weren't, but even a lowball offer would mean food for weeks, a bus ticket to somewhere warmer, a cheap motel room with a door that locked from the inside, and a bed that wasn't made of cardboard behind a dumpster. She closed her fist around the ring and stood, her knees cracking from crouching too long in the cold. Then she heard the voice. "God damn it! Where is it? Where the hell is it?" A man stood near the far side of the parking lot, maybe 30 yards away, hands running through his hair in that universal gesture of panic. 40 years old, maybe older, hard to tell with the beard and the wear of the road on his face. Leather vest over a faded flannel shirt, the kind of vest that told a story if you knew how to read the patches. Boots worn smooth at the heels, jeans with oil stains, tattoos covering both forearms. She could see them even from this distance, dark ink against weathered skin. He was turning in slow circles, eyes scanning the ground methodically, movements growing more frantic with each empty pass. Lily watched him for a long moment, saw the shape of desperation in the set of his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched. Recognized it because she'd worn that same desperation herself, had felt it pressing down on her chest until she couldn't breathe, had carried it with her for 5 weeks of running. She looked at the ring in her hand, then at the man. Then at the pawn shop she couldn't see but could still picture in her mind. She made a choice. She stood slowly, the ring clutched in her fist, and walked toward him across the gravel. Her footsteps crunched in the silence of early morning, that dead hour before the sun rose when even the highway went quiet, and the world felt suspended between night and day. He didn't notice her at first, too focused on the ground, on retracing his steps from his motorcycle to the diner entrance and back again, searching, muttering to himself, words she couldn't quite hear but recognized the tone of, prayers to a God who probably wasn't listening, curses at his own stupidity, the desperate internal monologue of someone who had lost something they couldn't afford to lose. "Excuse me," she said quietly when she was 10 feet away. He spun around fast, hand going automatically to his belt in a defensive gesture before he registered that she was just a kid, looked at her with wild eyes, pupils dilated with panic. "What?" She held out her hand and opened her fist slowly, deliberately. The ring sat in her palm, catching the first pale light of dawn breaking over the eastern hills. "I think this is yours." He froze completely, went absolutely still in a way that was almost eerie, like someone had pressed pause on a video, stared at the ring like it was something impossible, something he'd given up hope of ever seeing again. His face went pale beneath the beard. His hands started shaking visibly. "Where?" His voice cracked. He cleared his throat and tried again. "Where did you find that?" She pointed to the spot near the dumpster, maybe 15 feet from where they stood. "Over there, in the dirt, half buried. I was just looking around and saw it." He took a step toward her, then stopped himself like he didn't want to spook her, held out his hand. She placed the ring in his palm, and the moment the metal touched his skin, something in his face broke open, relief so profound it was almost painful to witness. He held the ring up to the growing light, turned it over, examined the engraving inside, the initials outside. His jaw clenched, his eyes went wet. For a long moment he just stood there, not speaking, barely breathing, just holding this piece of silver like it was the most valuable thing in the world. "Is it yours?" Lily asked. Quietly, though the answer was obvious in every line of his body. He nodded slowly, unable to speak, slipped it onto his right hand, ring finger. It fit perfectly, settling into a groove worn into his skin from years of wearing it. He stared at his hand for a moment, then looked up at her, really looked at her for the first time, saw the thin jacket and the worn jeans, saw the backpack against the wall behind her, saw the shadows under her eyes that spoke of nights without real sleep. Understanding passed across his face like a cloud moving over the sun. "You could have kept it," he said quietly, voice rough with emotion. "It's not mine," she said simply. "You could have pawned it, gotten money for it, probably a few $100s. She shrugged, uncomfortable with the weight of his gaze. It looked important, like something someone would want back. He was quiet for a long time, studying her face like he was trying to memorize it. Then he pulled out his wallet with the hands that were still shaking slightly and removed several bills. She could see 20s, maybe 50s. Held them out to her. "Here, please, for finding it, for bringing it back. You have no idea what this means." She shook her head and took a step back. "I don't want money. Kid, take it. You clearly need it. I said I don't want it." Her voice was firmer now, carrying an edge that came from too many adults trying to give her things with strings attached. "It's your ring. I'm just glad you got it back." He stared at her for another long moment, then slowly put the money away, nodded with something like respect. "What's your name?" "Lily." "Lily." He repeated it like he was committing it to memory, like it was something sacred. "My name's Garrett Morrison." He touched the ring on his finger. "Thank you. I mean it. You have no idea what you just did for me." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. He walked to his motorcycle, a massive Harley parked near the diner entrance, black and chrome, older but maintained with obvious care. The engine roared to life with a sound that shattered the morning quiet, deep and powerful. He sat there for a moment, hands still on the throttle, looking back at her one more time. "What you did, returning this, that's rare, Lily. Real rare. Don't let the world take that away from you." Before she could respond, he rode away, the sound of his engine fading slowly into the distance until there was only the wind and the buzzing neon sign and the distant sound of early morning birds. Lily stood in the parking lot for a moment longer, watching the empty highway where he'd disappeared. Then she walked back to her backpack, picked it up, and pushed through the diner's back door into the kitchen, where the smell of coffee and bacon grease hung thick in the warm air. Betty's diner and the life between Betty was already at the grill, had been since 4 a.m., flipping eggs and pressing hash browns into the hot surface with a practiced motion that came from 40 years of doing the same thing. She was in her mid-60s, gray hair pulled back in a net, wearing a stained apron over jeans and a sweatshirt, kind eyes that had seen too much to judge, hands rough from work but gentle when they needed to be. She looked up when the door opened and saw Lily. "You're early." "Couldn't sleep," Lily said, which was true most mornings. Betty nodded, asked no questions. That was why Lily had stayed here for 2 weeks instead of moving on like she usually did after a few days in one place. Betty didn't pry, didn't ask about parents or school, or why a 16-year-old was washing dishes in exchange for food. She'd just looked at Lily that first day, really looked, the way Garrett had looked at her this morning, and said, "You can work for meals if you want, dishes, tables, whatever needs doing. Deal?" "Deal." Lily tied on an apron and started wiping down tables even though they were already clean, just needing something to do with her hands. The diner was empty at this hour, except for one trucker in the corner booth, nursing coffee and reading a paperback Western. The morning rush wouldn't start for another hour. Locals stopping for breakfast before work, truckers coming off the night shift, travelers getting an early start before the desert heat made the highway shimmer like water. Betty's husband Ron would arrive at 6 to work the register. Their daughter Claire would come in at 7 to help with the breakfast rush. It was a family operation, had been for 30 years, and Lily had been allowed to exist on the edges of it without questions or judgment. She thought about the ring as she wiped down the counter, about the choice she'd made, about the pawn shop and the bus ticket and the locked door, about Garrett's shaking hands and wet eyes, and the way he'd looked at the ring like it was more than metal. She wondered what it meant, that ring, wondered about the initials, JM, and whether they belonged to Garrett or someone else, wondered about the symbol inside, the wings and the wheel, wondered why returning it had felt more important than the money it would have brought. She didn't know that in a few hours, she would have her answer. The girl who ran Lily had been running for 5 weeks and 3 days. Not running from the law, or from debt, or from anything that would make sense to most people. Running from a house in Portland, where her stepfather's hands went, places they shouldn't, when her mother was at work. Running from a mother who looked the other way because acknowledging the truth meant acknowledging her own failure, her own choice to marry a man who smiled in public and hurt in private. Running from a school where Lily had been invisible, just another face in the hallway, another name on a roster that teachers mispronounced. She'd tried telling once, told a guidance counselor during sophomore year, a young woman with kind eyes who'd said all the right things about believing survivors and protecting students. The counselor had called her mother. Her mother had come to the school, sat in the office with perfect posture and perfect makeup, and said with perfect conviction that Lily was going through a difficult phase, was angry about the divorce from her real father, was acting out for attention. The counselor had believed her mother, or had chosen to believe her, which was the same thing in the end, had sent Lily back home with a pamphlet about teenage rebellion and a suggestion to try therapy. That night, her stepfather had come to her room and told her quietly, calmly, that if she ever tried to cause problems again, things would get much worse for her. His voice had been soft, almost gentle. That was the worst part. The gentleness of the threat, so she had stopped trying to tell, started planning instead. She had saved money from a part-time job at a coffee shop, $20 here, $30 there, hidden in a shoebox under her bed. She'd stolen some too, from her mother's purse, from her stepfather's wallet, small amounts they wouldn't notice right away. By mid-October, she'd had $470, not enough to start a real life somewhere else, but enough to run. She'd left on a Friday night when they thought she was sleeping, climbed out her bedroom window with a backpack containing clothes, a toothbrush, the money, and a photograph of her real father, the only thing she'd taken that mattered, walked to the bus station and bought a ticket to Seattle, then another ticket to Spokane, then Boise, then south through Nevada, moving randomly, making herself hard to follow, spending money carefully but knowing it wouldn't last forever. The bus had finally dropped her in this nowhere town 3 weeks ago when the money ran down to double digits. She'd found Betty's diner, found a job, found a place to sleep behind the building where the dumpster blocked the wind and the cardboard boxes she'd flattened made something like a mattress. It wasn't much, but it was better than what she'd left behind. She knew it couldn't last forever. Eventually someone would notice, a cop, a social worker, someone who asked questions she couldn't answer without lies. They'd put her back in the system or send her home, and she'd have to run again. But for now, for these 2 weeks, she had a routine, a purpose, food in her stomach and a place to sleep that felt almost safe. Almost. The first rumble. The morning passed in the usual rhythm. The trucker left, leaving $2 on the table. A couple came in for breakfast, older, tourists maybe, heading west. Ron arrived at 6 and started the register, Claire came in at 7, hair still wet from a shower, and took over the grill so Betty could handle the floor. Lily cleaned tables and refilled coffee and kept her head down, invisible in the way she'd learned to be. A waitress without being on the payroll, a helper without being noticed. That was the key to surviving in places like this. Make yourself useful but not memorable. Around 9:30, a family came in, parents and 3 kids, loud and chaotic in the way families are. The youngest dropped his orange juice and it shattered across the floor. Lily cleaned it up while the parents apologized profusely. The father left a $10 tip. Lily pocketed it, added it to the small stash she kept hidden in her backpack. $53 now, not enough to run again. Not yet. She was wiping down the counter when she heard it, a low rumble in the distance. Faint at first, almost lost beneath the clatter of dishes and conversation. But growing, getting louder, closer. She looked up. Through the window, she could see the highway stretching east and west. Empty a moment ago. Now, something was coming. The rumble grew louder, deeper, until it wasn't just sound but vibration. Something you felt in your chest, in your teeth. The windows started to rattle. Coffee rippled in cups. Conversation stopped as people turned to look. Then she saw them. Motorcycles. 3 at first, coming fast from the east, chrome catching the morning sun like fire. Then 6 more, then a dozen. They poured off the highway into the parking lot like water breaking through a dam, filling every available space, the sound of their engines overwhelming everything else. Black and chrome, leather vests covered in patches, beards and sunglasses and boots. More kept coming. Dozens, then more. 50 bikes, 70, 100. They filled the parking lot, spilled onto the gravel shoulders, lined up along the highway itself. The diner went silent. A trucker stood up from his booth, eyes wide. The family with 3 kids huddled together. The mother pulled her children closer. Ron reached for the phone under the register, fingers hovering over the buttons. Betty put a hand on his arm. "Wait, Betty, there's 100 of them." "I said wait." The engines cut one by one, a wave of silence rolling across the parking lot, until there was only the wind and the creak of leather and the sound of boots on gravel. The bikers dismounted but didn't move toward the diner. Just stood there beside their bikes, waiting. Lily's heart hammered against her ribs. She backed toward the kitchen door, every instinct screaming at her to run. She knew trouble when she saw it, had spent her whole life learning to recognize the shapes it took. One of the bikers walked to the diner entrance. Tall, maybe 6'2", with a gray beard that reached his chest. Leather vest covered in more patches than the others, rockers and symbols and insignia that meant things she didn't understand. His eyes were hidden behind sunglasses, but she could feel the weight of his gaze as he scanned the diner. He pushed open the door. The bell above the entrance chimed cheerfully, absurdly normal against the weight of the moment. That bright little ding that usually announced tourists or truckers or families. Not this. He stepped inside and stood just past the threshold, taking his time, looking at every face. The family pressed back into their booth. The trucker sat down slowly. Ron's hand was still on the phone. When the man spoke, his voice was calm but carried authority, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to be heard. "We're looking for someone, a girl, teenage, dark hair. She found something that belonged to one of us this morning, around dawn." Lily's blood went cold. Her hands gripped the edge of the counter. Betty stepped forward, putting herself between the man and the rest of the diner. "This is a diner, not a lost and found. If you're not here to eat, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." The man turned his attention to her, studied her for a moment. "We don't want trouble. We just want to talk to her. She did something for one of our brothers. We're here to thank her." "Thank her?" Ron's voice was skeptical, almost scoffing. "That's 100 bikes out there. That's not how you thank someone. That's how you intimidate someone." "Sometimes gratitude requires witnesses," the man said simply. His eyes swept the room again, moving past the family, past the trucker, past Betty and Ron. Landed on Lily standing frozen near the kitchen door, still holding a dish rag in her white-knuckled hands. "There, that's her." Every head in the diner turned. Lily's legs went weak. She dropped the dish rag. The man took a step toward her, slow and deliberate. "You're Lily, right? You found a ring this morning, silver, gave it to Garrett." She couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only stare at him and the door behind him and the sea of motorcycles beyond and calculate how far she could run before they caught her. "We need to talk to you," the man said, voice gentler now. "Just talk, that's all. You're not in trouble, I promise you that." Betty moved toward Lily, protective. "She doesn't have to go anywhere with you. We're not asking her to come with us. We're asking if we can talk. Here, if she wants. Outside, if that's easier. Wherever she feels safe. She doesn't feel safe, Ron said, voice rising. Look at her. You're terrifying her. The man pulled off his sunglasses, revealing tired eyes that held no malice, only something that looked like earnestness. I know, and I'm sorry for that. But what she did this morning, that matters. It matters more than she knows, and we came to tell her that. Lily found her voice, though it came out smaller than she wanted. I just gave him back his ring, that's all. That's all, the man repeated slowly. That's all. He shook his head, something like a sad smile crossing his face. No, Lily, that's not all, not even close. He gestured toward the door, toward the parking lot full of bikers. Every person out there, 147 brothers from 3 states, they're here because of what you did, because Garrett told us about it, and we decided that deserved recognition. Recognition for what? Her voice was shaking now. I found a ring and gave it back. Why would that bring 100 bikers to a diner in the middle of nowhere? The man studied her for a long moment. Because that ring wasn't just jewelry. And what you did wasn't just kindness. It was sacrifice, and in our world, that means everything. Lily shook her head, not understanding. Come outside, the man said quietly. Let us explain. And if you don't like what you hear, if you want us to leave, we'll go, all of us, right now, but give us a chance to say thank you the right way. Betty looked at Lily. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Lily looked at the man, at Betty, at the door, at the 100 motorcycles waiting outside. Every instinct told her to run, to grab her backpack and disappear into the desert before this got worse. But a smaller voice, quieter but somehow stronger, whispered that maybe, just maybe, she should listen. She took a breath, nodded once. The man smiled, and it transformed his face into something almost kind. Thank you. My name's Marcus Stone. I'm the president of the Hells Angels Charter out of Reno. What you did for Garrett, for my brother, that created a debt, and we'd like to repay it. Act 2, into the fire. The parking lot. Lily followed Marcus outside, her legs shaking with each step. Betty came with her, hand on her shoulder, protective. Ron stayed inside but watched through the window, phone still in hand. The parking lot was overwhelming. Motorcycles everywhere she looked. Harleys and Indians and custom builds, chrome gleaming in the late morning sun, and beside each bike, a man. Some were older, gray-bearded like Marcus. Some were younger, maybe early 20s. All wore leather vests, cuts, she'd heard them called, covered in patches. Hells Angels, Nomads, various chapters, Reno, Las Vegas, Phoenix, names and symbols and insignia that meant things she didn't understand. They watched her in silence, not threatening, just watching, waiting. Garrett stood near the front, beside his black Harley. The ring gleamed on his finger. When he saw her, he nodded once, something like gratitude and apology mixed together in the gesture. Marcus walked to the center of the lot and raised his voice. Brothers, this is Lily. She's the one Garrett told us about. Silence. The weight of 147 stares. She found Jason's ring this morning, found it in the dirt. She could have kept it, could have pawned it. She's clearly living rough. Anyone can see that. That ring would have meant money, food, shelter, a way out of whatever she's running from. Lily flinched at how clearly he saw her, but she didn't keep it, Marcus continued. She gave it back, asked for nothing, refused money when it was offered, just handed Garrett the ring and walked away. He turned to face her directly. You have no idea what you did, do you? She shook her head. Tell her, Garrett. Garrett stepped forward, hands in his pockets, looking uncomfortable with the attention. The ring belonged to my brother, my blood brother, Jason Marcus Morrison. The J.M. engraved on it. Those are his initials. He held up his hand, showing the ring. Jason founded the Reno Charter 20 years ago. Built it from nothing. 3 guys and a dream, that's how it started. By the time he got sick last year, we had 70 members across Nevada and into California. He was the heart of this club, the conscience of it. Garrett's voice thickened with emotion. He got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in March, given 6 months. He lasted 8, fought like hell right up to the end. Before he died, he called me to his bedside, literally on his deathbed, oxygen mask and morphine drip and all, and he took off this ring, put it in my hand. Said I was supposed to carry on what he'd built. Said the ring was proof that I had his blessing, his authority to lead. He paused, collecting himself. In the MC world, motorcycle club world, symbols matter. This ring doesn't just represent Jason, it represents his legacy, his authority, his vision for what this club should be. There are only 3 of these rings in existence. One's buried with Jason, on his finger in his coffin. One's locked in a safe at our clubhouse in Reno. And this one, he touched the ring on his hand. This one's supposed to be on me, always. Another biker stepped forward, the one with the gray ponytail Lily had seen earlier. My name's Hank Peterson. I rode with Jason for 18 years. That ring was custom made by a silversmith in Carson City. Took him 3 months to craft each one. They can't be replicated, can't be replaced. If you lose one, it's gone forever. And if I'd lost it, Garrett added, voice dropping, if I'd lost Jason's ring, that would have been seen as a sign that Jason's spirit didn't want me to lead, that I was unworthy. It would have meant the end of my position, maybe the end of my place in this club entirely. Depends on how generous the brothers felt. Lily stared at him. I didn't know, it looked important. It was important, Marcus said. It is important. And you saved Garrett's reputation, his position, maybe his life in this club, all without knowing. You did it just because it was the right thing to do. Another biker spoke up, younger, with a shaved head and kind eyes. Most people wouldn't have done that, especially not a kid who's clearly living rough. That kind of integrity, that's rare. That's why we're here, Marcus said. All of us. We came from Reno, from Vegas, from Phoenix, from as far as San Diego. Some of us rode through the night, because when Garrett told us what happened, told us about the girl who gave back Jason's ring without asking for anything, we knew we had to meet you, had to thank you properly. Lily shook her head, overwhelmed. You didn't need to do this. It was just a ring. No, Garrett said firmly. It wasn't just a ring. And you're not just some kid. You're someone who sacrificed for a stranger when you had nothing to spare. That's heroic. I'm not a hero, Lily said, voice breaking. I'm just trying to survive. Then let us help you do that, Marcus said gently. The questions, Marcus gestured to a bench outside the diner. Can we sit? Can we talk for a minute? No pressure. You can leave any time. Lily looked at Betty, who nodded encouragement. Slowly, reluctantly, she walked to the bench and sat. Marcus sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. Several other bikers gathered in a loose semicircle. Garrett, Hank, the young man with the shaved head, a few others. The rest stayed back, giving her room to breathe. How old are you, Lily? Marcus asked gently. 16. Murmurs rippled through the group. Someone swore softly. Where are your parents? She looked at the ground. My dad died when I was 8. Cancer. My mom remarried. I left. You ran away? She nodded. How long ago? 5 weeks. Are they looking for you? She shrugged. Maybe my mom is. I don't know. I don't think my stepfather cares. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Can I ask why you left? You don't have to answer, but it helps us understand. Lily's hands clenched in her lap. She didn't want to say it. Didn't want to speak the words aloud because that made them real, made them something that couldn't be taken back. But these men had ridden through the night to thank her for something she still didn't fully understand. The least she could do was tell the truth. My stepfather hurt me, she said quietly. Not like hitting, not usually, but other ways I'm not supposed to talk about. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with anger barely contained. Marcus's voice went very quiet, very controlled. Did you tell anyone? I told a counselor at school. She called my mom. My mom said I was lying. The counselor believed her. So you ran. So I ran, Lily confirmed. And you've been living rough since then? 5 weeks on the street? She nodded. Garrett made a sound low in his throat, somewhere between a growl and a curse. Hank turned away, jaw clenched. The young man with the shaved head said, Jesus Christ, under his breath. Marcus rubbed it into his face with both hands. When he looked at her again, his eyes were wet. Okay, here's what's going to happen. We're going to help you. Not because we pity you, because we owe you. You saved Garrett. Now we're going to return the favor. I don't need... Yes, you do, Marcus said firmly, but not unkindly. You're 16 years old, sleeping behind a dumpster, working for food. That's not sustainable, Lily. Winter's coming. The desert gets cold at night. You know that. You need help. I don't want to go back to Oregon, she said, panic rising in her voice. We're not sending you back, Marcus promised. We have resources, contacts, people we trust, lawyers, social workers, people who help kids who've fallen through the cracks. We're going to find you somewhere safe, and we're going to make sure your stepfather never gets near you again. Lily wanted to believe him, wanted to believe this was real, that help had actually arrived in the form of 100 bikers who cared about a ring. But belief was dangerous. Belief led to disappointment. Why? She whispered. Why do you care? Garrett sat down on her other side, the bench creaking under his weight. Because Jason would have cared. My brother believed the strong should protect the weak. That's what he built this club on. Not intimidation, not violence, protection, brotherhood, looking out for people who can't look out for themselves. He touched the ring on his finger. Every time I look at this ring, I'm going to think about you, about what you did, about the girl who gave away her chance at survival just to do the right thing. How can I wear this ring, Jason's ring, and not help you? How can I claim to carry his legacy and then walk away from someone who embodies everything he believed in? Tears burned behind Lily's eyes. She blinked them back angrily, not wanting to cry in front of all these people. Marcus stood. I need to make some calls. We're going to get this sorted. In the meantime, he gestured to Hank, get her some food, real food, whatever she wants. I already ate, Lily protested. When? Hank challenged. She couldn't remember. Yesterday, maybe. I'm fine. That's not what I asked. Hank walked into the diner and came back with Betty. They talked quietly for a moment, then Betty nodded and headed back inside. 10 minutes later, she emerged with a tray loaded with food. Pancakes, eggs, bacon, hash browns, toast, orange juice. Set it in front of Lily on the bench. Eat, Betty said simply. Don't argue, just eat. Lily ate, not because she wanted to, but because refusing felt impossible under the weight of so much attention, so much concern. The food was good, better than anything she'd eaten in weeks. She made herself go slow, not wanting to seem desperate, but her stomach betrayed her by growling loudly halfway through the pancakes. The bikers watched her eat, not in a creepy way, more like they were witnessing something important, something that mattered. Like feeding this one hungry teenager somehow balanced a scale they'd been trying it to level for years. When she finished, Marcus came back. Okay, called Maria Santos. She's a social worker out of Vegas. We've worked with her before on situations like this. She's good people. She's driving up here now, should be here in about 90 minutes. What happens then? Lily asked warily. Then you talk to her. She'll assess your situation. Find you emergency placement. Start the legal process of making sure you're protected. What if I don't want to talk to a social worker? Marcus crouched down so they were eye level. Then you don't. It's your choice. Always your choice. But I'm asking you to give her a chance. Give us a chance. We're not perfect. We're bikers, not child welfare experts. But we're here, and we care, and we want to help. Let us try. Lily looked around at the parking lot full of motorcycles and leather-clad men. Looked at Garrett and the ring on his finger. Looked at Betty standing in the doorway of the diner, arms crossed, protective even now. She thought about sleeping behind the dumpster again, tonight. Thought about the cold that was coming, the winter that would make the desert inhospitable. Thought about how long she could survive like this before something bad happened, before she got sick or hurt or desperate enough to make dangerous choices. Okay, she said quietly. I'll talk to her. Act 3. The cost. Maria Santos arrived 93 minutes later in a silver sedan with government plates. She was in her early 40s, Hispanic, with shoulder-length black hair and eyes that had seen too much suffering but hadn't lost their warmth. She wore jeans and a blouse, professional without being intimidating. The kind of person who knew how to talk to scared kids because she'd been doing it for 20 years. She parked between motorcycles and climbed out, nodding to Marcus like they were old friends. They talked quietly for a few minutes beside her car, Marcus gesturing toward Lily, Maria nodding and asking questions. Then Maria grabbed a leather messenger bag from her back seat and walked over. Hi, Lily. I'm Maria. Marcus called me. Can we talk? Lily nodded, throat tight. They moved into the diner, to a corner booth away from the few remaining customers. Betty brought coffee for Maria and hot chocolate for Lily without being asked. Maria opened her messenger bag and pulled out a tablet and stylus, but didn't turn it on yet. Just set it on the table between them. First things first, Maria said. This conversation is between you and me. Anything you tell me stays confidential, unless you're in immediate danger or you tell me someone else is. I'm not here to judge you or force you into anything. I'm here to help. That's it. Okay? Okay, Lily said quietly. Marcus told me you ran away from home, from Oregon. Is that right? Yes. How long ago? 5 weeks and 4 days. Maria nodded, making a mental note. Can you tell me why you ran? Lily looked at her hot chocolate, watching the steam rise. My stepfather was hurting me. Physically? Not exactly. He didn't hit me or anything, but She couldn't finish. Maria's voice went softer. Did he touch you inappropriately? Lily nodded, eyes burning. For how long? 2 years, since he married my mom. Maria closed her eyes briefly, taking a breath before continuing. Did you tell anyone? A school counselor, last year. She called my mom. My mom said I was lying. The counselor believed her. And after that? After that, I stopped trying to tell people. I just waited, saved money, planned, then I left. Maria picked up the stylus and started taking notes. Have you been in contact with your mother since you left? No? Do you know if she's looking for you? I don't know. Maybe. I didn't take my phone. Smart, Maria said. Phones can be tracked. What about your biological father? Is he in the picture? He died when I was 8. Cancer. I'm sorry. Maria paused. Any other family? Grandparents? Aunts or uncles? My dad's parents died before I was born. My mom's parents are in Korea. We don't talk to them. Okay, Maria set down the stylus. Here's what I can do. Based on what you've told me, I can place you in emergency foster care while we investigate your situation. That means you'll have a safe place to sleep tonight, food, supervision. Meanwhile, I'll contact Child Protective Services in Oregon and open an investigation into your stepfather. If what you're telling me is true, and I believe you, then we'll make sure you never have to go back there. What if CPS doesn't believe me either? Lily asked bitterly. Then I'll make them believe you, Maria said with quiet intensity. I've been doing this job for 22 years, Lily. I know how to fight, and I promise you, I will fight for you. Lily wanted to believe her. What about foster care? I've heard stories, bad stories. I know. The system's broken in a lot of ways. There are bad placements, bad families, but there are good ones too. And I'm very careful about where I place kids. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through contacts. I have a family in mind, David and Lisa Chen. They're in their 50s. Their kids are grown and out of the house. They've been licensed foster parents for 18 years. I've placed probably 30 kids with them over the years, and every single one has had good things to say. What if they're like, Lily couldn't finish the sentence, like your stepfather? Maria's voice was gentle but firm. They're not. I've known them for a decade. David's a retired teacher. Lisa's a nurse. They're good people, Lily, really good. But if you get there and something feels wrong, if you feel unsafe for even a second, you call me, day or night. I'll come get you immediately and move you somewhere else. That's a promise. Lily looked out the window at the parking lot full of motorcycles, at Marcus and Garrett, standing beside their bikes, talking quietly, at Betty refilling coffee for a trucker, at this weird, impossible moment where strangers had decided she mattered. Okay, she said quietly, I'll go with the Chens, but if it's bad, you call me, Maria repeated. Here. She pulled out a business card and wrote a number on the back, office number on the front, personal cell on the back. You can reach me anytime. I mean that. Lily took the card, folded it carefully, and put it in her pocket next to the photograph of her father she always carried. The gathering, while Maria made arrangements, calling the Chens, coordinating with CPS, handling the bureaucratic necessities, the bikers gathered in the parking lot. Marcus stood on the diner steps and raised his voice. Brothers, you know the situation. This girl, Lily, returned something irreplaceable to one of us, saved Garrett's reputation, saved his position in this club. She did it without knowing what it meant. Did it even though she had nothing, even though keeping that ring might have been the difference between surviving and not surviving another week on the street. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Now we know her story. She's 16, running from abuse, living rough, Sleeping behind a dumpster for 2 weeks, working for food, and winter's coming. She can't survive out here like that. He paused, letting that sink in. Jason believed in protecting the vulnerable. He built this club on that principle, said we weren't just brothers to each other, we were guardians, protectors. That's what the wings on our patch mean, not freedom to do whatever we want. Freedom earned by protecting those who can't protect themselves. More nods. Several bikers touched the patches on their vests, the wings Marcus referenced. Maria's arranging placement for her, foster care with a good family, but that's just the beginning. She's going to need money for school, for clothes, for the 1,000 things you need when you're trying to start over. Marcus pulled off his riding gloves. So, I'm asking each of you, contribute what you can, not as charity, as a debt paid. Jason's ring came back to us because of her. Let's make sure she's taken care of. Hank pulled out his wallet immediately. I've got 200. Another biker stepped forward. 300 here. 50, said a younger member. 100, from someone else. Garrett walked through the crowd holding his riding helmet upside down like a collection plate. Bikers reached into pockets, into saddlebags, into the secret stashes they kept for emergencies. 10s and 20s and 50s and hundreds. Some contributed their whole paycheck. Others gave what they had, 5s and 1s and handfuls of change. No one kept track. No one judged the amount. Every contribution went into the helmet. 20 minutes later, Garrett dumped the contents onto the seat of his bike and started counting. Hank helped. Marcus watched. $8,467, Garrett said finally, voice thick with emotion. Plus, about $30 in change. Marcus nodded slowly. Put it in an envelope. We'll give it to her before she leaves. You think she'll take it? Hank asked. She refused money this morning when I offered it, Garrett said. Just handed back the ring and walked away. Then we make her understand it's not charity, Marcus said firmly. It's reciprocity. She gave us something we couldn't replace. We're giving her a chance she can't get any other way. That's fair. The gift. An hour later, Maria finished her calls and came back outside. Okay, the Chens are expecting us. They live about 40 minutes from here. I'm going to drive Lily there now. They've agreed to emergency placement pending formal approval from CPS, which should come through in a few days. Marcus nodded. Can we talk to her before you go? Maria looked at Lily, who'd been sitting on the bench during all of this, watching everything with wide eyes. It's up to you. Lily nodded. Marcus, Garrett, and Hank walked over. Marcus held a thick manila envelope. Garrett had something small wrapped in a bandana. Marcus crouched down in front of her, eye level. We collected some money, all of us. It's not a gift. It's not charity. It's payment for what you did. You saved Garrett's position in this club. Saved his reputation. That's worth something. This is that worth. He held out the envelope. It was thick, bulging with bills. Lily stared at it. I can't. You can, Marcus said gently but firmly. You did something extraordinary. We're responding in kind. Take it, please. Slowly, reluctantly, she took the envelope, opened it and saw the bills inside. More money than she'd ever seen in one place. Her hands started shaking. This is too much. It's not enough, Garrett said, but it's a start. Use it for whatever you need. School supplies, clothes, savings for college, whatever. He held out the bandana-wrapped object. One more thing. Lily unwrapped it carefully. Inside was a silver medallion on a chain, maybe the size of a quarter. The same symbol she'd seen on the ring, wings and a wheel, was engraved on one side. On the other side was engraved J.M., Protector. This was Jason's, Garrett said quietly. He wore it every day for 20 years. After he died, I kept it. But I think he'd want you to have it now. He placed it around her neck, the silver warm from his hand. The weight of it settled against her chest, solid and real. This means something in our world, Garrett continued. It means you're protected, under our care. If you ever need help, ever, you show this medallion to any member of any MC that respects the Hells Angels. They'll know what it means. They'll help you. No questions asked. Lily touched the medallion, tears streaming down her face now, no longer trying to hide them. Why are you doing this? I don't understand. Because you deserve it, Marcus said simply. Because you proved something about yourself this morning. You proved you have integrity when it would have been easier not to. That's rare, Lily. That's precious. And it's worth protecting. Hank added, and because Jason believed people should look out for each other. You looked out for Garrett when you didn't have to. Now we're looking out for you. That's how this works. Maria stepped forward, hand on Lily's shoulder. We should get going. The Chens are waiting. Lily stood slowly, clutching the envelope and touching the medallion. Betty appeared from the diner with Lily's backpack, cleaned and mended where it had been torn. I fixed the strap for you, honey, and I put some extra food in there, for the road. Lily hugged her, surprising both of them. Thank you, for everything, for not asking questions. You take care of yourself, Betty said, voice rough with emotion, and you come back and visit sometime, you hear? I will. The bikers formed two lines from the diner steps to Maria's car, creating a kind of honor guard. Lily walked between them slowly, aware of every eye on her, every silent nod of respect. Some of them touched their vests as she passed, the wing patch over their hearts. A salute, a recognition. Garrett was the last one she passed. He held out his hand. She took it, and he pulled her into a brief hug. Thank you, Lily, for giving me back my brother's ring. I'll never forget what you did. Thank you for not forgetting about me, she whispered back. She climbed into Maria's car. As they pulled out of the parking lot, she looked back through the rear window. 147 bikers stood in the parking lot, watching her leave. Some raised their hands in farewell. Some just stood silent witness. Garrett held up his right hand, the ring catching the sunlight one last time. Then,